Hello, this is Mike with Reedy to Travel. We are at Sydney's Opera House, awaiting a tour. We're going to go check it out. We also have the famous bridge, the Sydney Arch Bridge. And I don't know if you can see, but on the very top of that bridge, there are people walking up it. And it's raining today, so it's kind of crazy if you ask me, but they're doing it. Following it along, we have a ferry coming in, several ferries out here, and the Celebrity Edge is in town. And look at the town. We have downtown Sydney. Wonderful place, easy to get around. Let's go see how this opera tour is.
So I'm going to hazard a wild guess that none of you have been here before. I don't know. There's still people coming up the stairs. Anyone been here before at all? You have. You're not just Canadian, but you've also been here before. Oh, you're from Vancouver. You're from BC, aren't you? Yeah. Because it's just a quick flight down the Pacific and you're here, aren't you? I mean, it's not that quick, I know that. What, 15 hours or something like that? Yeah. The building was very controversial. You will discover more about that soon. It's not surprising when you get a structure of this sort of size, but we'll unravel all that mystery to you very soon. On this side, we have 6 of the total of 10 shells over the building. The 2 smallest here over a restaurant called Benelong, and then the biggest of the shells is here over the concert hall. Many of the people here today, milling around, waiting to go into the theatre, are going to the performance in there today. So we have every theatre in the building is in use today. 6 venues in the building, all in use, the whole lot, plus the restaurants working. The only thing not happening today is an outdoor performance there. But everything else in use multiple times today. This is not at all unusual. Then to make up the 10 altogether, we have another 4 sales on the other side, sitting over the second biggest theatre, which is the Joan Sutherland Theatre. She was a famous opera singer. Will be in there as well. We'll have time for questions, but we will press on at the beginning of the tour to get a few things achieved. Then we can relax a little bit after that. But before we go in, I'm going to give you a bit of a hint as to the Mexican connection. So if we look that way, which is south-southeast, toward the bottom of the stairs, if you walked in across this paved area to get here, you would have seen the monumental stairs about 100 meters across here, and that they continue then separated in part up to these areas here. The architect went to Japan, China, and Mexico in 1947. Pretty hard to get around in that era, but he got there. And in Mexico, he went and looked at Chichen Itza. Now, you have trouble saying that. One of my friends from Chicago said, "Oh, don't worry, call it chicken pizza." Okay, fine. So, chicken pizza. And the idea is, imagine this is the ordinary life, and that the minds would then go up the steps to a ceremonial existence up here, or probably to be sacrificed along with their pet goat. We don't do that here. Well, we do it, but not with the pet goat. But that's why it's designed like that, based on those principles from the architects, the designers way back 1,000 years ago. Let's go inside. What we're walking on here, and the walls immediately in front of us, and you'll find inside the building as well, are tiles made of pink granite. So this is ancient hard stone from the Blue Mountains west of us, where those great big clouds are forming. Probably going to rain again. And they're mixed with concrete and the like to create these massive tiles everywhere. Meanwhile, underneath us is a very important part of the building, 4 floors below us, to help us to manage 2,000 performances a year, which is what happens in this building. We have a big loading dock below us. It's relatively new. Between 2015 to 2017, we spent about $100 million doing a big dig underneath. And then all the deliveries, 1,000 vehicles a week coming through there to deliver. It is a relentless process. We never close. There are no closed days at the Opera House at all. Not Christmas Day never. And yeah, a lot of activity. Today is a good example. So we will be in part this morning going around other groups, weaving our way around, negotiating, getting in and out of places. Aren't we, Celine? Are we? Okay, you three can go first. There we go. The rest of you, one at a time, through you go. Chuck a left. You know what that means? It's Aussie for turn left. Chuck a left. Do a Yui, chuck a left. We're scanning you to make sure you're not arriving with dangerous ideas. Especially you. Yes. It is humid, isn't it? Is it humid? It feels it, yeah. Okay. yeah. Gives me a second back. Right. The area that you're walking through and perhaps standing in right now is an area of a small exhibition. We have an ever-changing exhibition in a small space, and these pictures all come from our archives. We were very well documented during the building, and there are QR codes on them, so if you want to come back later and have a look, you're welcome to. Of all the photographs in this area, my favorite one is down here, and you will see more about this when we get to see the video. Yeah, it's the lack of safety equipment during the building. And it's kind of like, oh, well, they've got hats. Well, I don't see anything holding them on. So if you bent over, they can probably fall off. These guys are standing on something like that. You'll find out in the video how many people died during the building. Whoa. I could give you a heads up on that, actually. None, amazingly. In here, there are a few people who might like a seat. In here, the front near the screen, there are some benches. Not all of you will be able to sit, but some of you can. So come to the front and have a seat there if you would like. Okay. There's a seat in there for you too, just there. Yeah. This is not the main video I'm going to show you. What this is something done by our IT department a few years ago to help, in a way, get you a sense of the complexity of the mathematics and the geometry to create the shells. But it was extraordinarily hard. In the video, you're going to find out a lot more what's called the spherical solution. That's the key to the building of the Opera House, really. For now, for the video, don't need your headphones. So take your headphones off. You have speakers all around you. And I'll see you at the other end.
The Sydney Opera House is the symbol of modern Australia, a World Heritage listed masterpiece synonymous with inspiration and creativity. Since opening in 1973, it has been home to many of the world's greatest artists and performances, and a meeting place for matters of local and international significance. But the history of performance on this land stretches back thousands of years before Europeans arrived. For the traditional custodians, the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, it was an especially prized location known as Jubagali, a place to eat, sing, dance and share stories with each other. Today the land is also known as Bennelong Point, named after Woodaway Bennelong, a senior Eora man at the time of the first British settlement in Australia in 1788. Kidnapped by the first governor of New South Wales, Arthur Phillip, Bennelong served as an intermediary between the British and Eora people. In return, he was given a hut in which to live out his years on the tidal island at the tip of the point that now bears his name. Bennelong's hut eventually gave way to the construction of Fort Macquarie, and at the turn of the 20th century, the fort was converted into a tram depot. By the middle of the 20th century, a recognition that Australia needed a world-class home for culture and the performing arts had gathered real momentum. More than anyone, the Premier of New South Wales, Joseph Carl, along with Eugene Goossens, conductor of the Sydney Symphony Orchestra and director of the Conservatorium of Music, were responsible for this momentum becoming a reality. For Goossens, Sydney's need for a grand cultural and music centre had long been obvious. He could not have hoped for a more encouraging supporter than Carl. In 1956, with Bennelong Point chosen as a location, a worldwide competition for a national opera house was launched. 220 entries would arrive by the closing date, and shortly after, on January 29, 1957, Premier Joe Carl announced that the winner was Design 218 by little-known Danish architect Jørn Utzon. Unique amongst their competition entries, it placed the concert halls side by side, their roofs extending out over the end of Bennelong Point, bringing to mind Sydney's cliffs and sails. It was a strikingly sculptural response, fusing modern and ancient architecture in a work of art built for the performance of works of art. Entirely financed by public lottery, it took architects, engineers, construction workers, politicians, and most fundamentally the people of Australia to realise the project over a period of 16 years. Initially, Utzon and the engineers from Arup & Partners struggled to find a solution to the construction of the shells that captured not only the spirit of the design, but could also house the complexity of a working building. After more than 3 years, Utzon had a now famous epiphany that would solve what had become a particularly difficult engineering problem. Utzon's breakthrough was to derive each of the shells from the constant and universal form of the sphere. This one decision solved a multitude of problems at once. It captured the essence of the original sketch while allowing the building blocks to be prefabricated with comparative ease. Many details comprise the extraordinary story of the building's construction. The transformation of the geometry from sketch to the timeless principle of the sphere was just the beginning. 10,000 labourers, carpenters, electricians and engineers would work to finish the house between 1958 and 1973. Not one death was recorded on the site, despite the absence of safety harnesses, as men crawled over the superstructure or rode the crane hooks hundreds of feet into the air. But by 1965, disputes and disagreements had seriously fractured the project's leadership of architects and engineers. A change in government had also brought a change in political will, personified by the newly appointed Minister for Public Works, Davis Hughes. Hughes criticised Utzon's approach and refused to pay fees due to the architect until, in desperation, he was forced to close his office. Unable to pay the salaries of his staff, Utzon wrote to Hughes, "You have forced me to leave the job." Within hours of receiving the letter, Hughes replied to Utzon that he had accepted it as the architect's resignation. Despite public outrage at the treatment of Utzon, he would leave Australia never to return or see with his own eyes his masterpiece finished. In Utzon's wake, alongside Arup & Partners, a consortium of 3 Australian architects, Peter Hall, Lionel Todd, and David Littlemore, were tasked by Hughes with completing the building. But like Utzon before him, Hall faced enormous challenges, including an absence of approved designs with which to proceed, as well as political pressure to finish the building as quickly as possible, and the need to incorporate significant changes to the original brief. Among these changes was a complete redesign to what would now become the concert hall. After 16 years of design, construction, and controversy, the Sydney Opera House was officially opened by Queen Elizabeth II on the 20th of October, 1973. Half a century has passed since the first official performances on an opera house stage. In that time, Utzon's magnificent structure has become the symbol of the nation, recognised the world over. Illuminated by artists, audiences and visitors, the Sydney Opera House continues to derive its strength from one of the oldest human impulses of all, to gather in a special place to celebrate community, storytelling, and the strength and diversity of the creative spirit.
Although it's not busy here at the moment, we just need to make sure we've got a little bit of room behind you over here to let people pass through. So come over toward me. This is where I'm going to prove to some of you I don't speak French well, but it's only one name, so I'll get away with it. Le Corbusier. That do? Anyone want to question me about that? Okay, it'll do anyway. He was a Swiss-French architect. He was arguably the first of the international modernists. I mean, international in that he was recognized around the world because communications were getting better. But it was first before the Second World War and then after the Second World War as well. Now, he was, like any, great architects, using new technologies as they became available. And he built a lot with concrete and steel. He was commissioned in 1947 to design a whole city in northern India called Chandigarh. So if you look at Chandigarh online, you find it there in the Punjab, north of Delhi, about 4 hours. It is a city of steel and concrete and glass, very ordered. And so he was an inspiration for other generations of architects, and ours, certainly, who met him in a Paris cafe in 1959, and they talked for hours, and Utzon said, look, I know you're an artist as well. I'll pay for a work of art. Well, on the walls of the Opera House, that is the work of art right there. Now, behind me, in front of you, big windows. So, some of you are saying how awful the way in which he was treated as an Utzon. But many years later, he was re-engaged by us. It took a number of governments and quite some time. And we invited him in 1999 to help us redesign this whole area. Down here, we have 3 theaters, smaller theaters. We needed to redesign the whole area. And he took part in the design. In fact, these windows essentially are all his design. So on the island of Mallorca in Spain, he designed and built 2 houses for his family over time. And one of them has these great big picture frame windows that, really frame the view. So these are his designs. He was unwell and elderly, couldn't get back. One of his 2 sons, they were both architects. One of them, Yen Utzon, came and supervised all this work on behalf of his father. So we had a reconnection with Utzon. In brief, Utzon's life, he lived to be 90, died in 2008. And a few years before he died, some great things happened in terms of recognition. The building was recognized in 2007, a year before he died, as a UNESCO World Heritage Building. And a few years before that, in 2004, he was granted something which is not given out easily. It's called the Pritzker Prize. Comes from Chicago, from the Pritzker family, and it's an award given out to the best architect of an era, of a kind of architecture. So, of course, this all rubs off nicely on us, doesn't it? So it was a happy ending than at first we might think, but no, you're not convinced it was happy at all. But there you are. That's the world of politics, and we do it pretty roughly here. Questions? Any? Did he ever get paid? Yeah, he did, but it was a pretty protracted process. That new government were not particularly nice, I have to say. But since none of you are from here, I could say what I like about them, couldn't I? Yeah, okay, but I won't, but I'm sure you can imagine from the way I'm talking that they were a pretty odious bunch. Right, please open, don't go anywhere. Damn, it's gone, yeah. Welcome to the world's slowest elevator. If this ran inside, let's say, the Eiffel Tower, take about a week to get to the top, probably. And it only goes 3 floors. There you go. The reason why will become apparent when we get in, to a degree. I mentioned 6 theatres. In this area we have 3 smaller ones. At the moment we have some movies in one of them that seats 400 people. And there'll be movies that are very art house kind of things that suit the Opera House very well. But it's a theatre also where we do a lot of Shakespeare and children's productions and things like that. comedy as well. Another theatre, the Studio Theatre, and today and there we have something called Calamity Jane, which is about that very rambunctious, very interesting American who I thought was actually just a made-up character, but was real over 100 years ago now. So that's happening in there, and another theatre down there where we have a production about it's an Australian book, was turned into a play now, at least a movie called The Shirley. So all of those theatres in multiple use today. Don't let's crush the little one down there. We'll find a little protective zone for you. There's a gap back there. I can see it from here. Yeah, yeah. Squeeze in. We'll all get in. You know, more bigger than a bunch of Aussies getting in. You're all fine. Okay, so apart from being lazy, why are we using the lift? It's because it's a bit different. Why is there no roof? Why is there no roof? Now the person with that camera on a stick, do not poke it up into the gap above you because it will stop the lift. There's beams of light running across. Why is there no roof? Quickly, come on. The light? Really? The what? So you can see. So you can see, yes, it is exactly that reason, so you can see the concrete above us. We can't cover that. We're not allowed to cover that. It's part of the aesthetics, the architecture of the building. So when this was added way after we built the building, we could not cover that. That's why we had to come up with a little interesting solution. It runs slowly because it's on hydraulics. That's the reason why. After the tour, you might want to linger in this area here, have a coffee, maybe suddenly decide you want to have lunch at the Benelong restaurant. If any of you want to crack open a bottle of wine, think of me to help share. It's only $12,100. It's a Grand Cru from France. Also, look at these things. The young people have no idea what this is all about. This is audio tape. What? Audio sound tape. You record on it, magnetic. You're into digital, I know, computers and things like that. Yeah, exactly. So are you, for that matter. And you, some of you. Anyway, this is us doing the again the archival work. This is what we have to deal with. We have to take things that. Tape recordings and film of this era, which is not that long ago. When I started in radio, I was recording interviews on tapes like that. But they deteriorate over time, of course. So the only way you can stabilize it before you run it back through a tape recorder or a film camera sometimes, a projector, is you have to bake them in a special oven to stabilize everything. Then prepare, because you can run it once through your heads, past the heads, the magnetic heads, because after that it'll probably just fall apart. So we have to do a lot of that, and so this is the result of that sort of work. They're still photographs, they're video, all manner of things. It's worth it just to linger for a few minutes and have a look. Okay, we are heading now up to the concert hall. Well, are we? No, I think we can't transit anymore. Let me have a look at my cheat sheet. It won't be a moment. I'll just talk amongst myself. What time is it? 10 past 11. South foyer. Nope. We'll go up the other side, across and up. This area is called the box office level, and it's where we have the two biggest theatres, the entry for those. We will have a look at both of them, and we also have an entry into another very small theatre which only seats about 160, and that's called the Utzon Room, so named after the architect. That has a function in it today, and the two big theatres have between them 3 performances today. It is, as I said, relentless. Please head up. If you want to get a feel for how this building was built, you've seen in the video, of course it didn't go into great technical detail, and I'm not going to either. You can read about that if you wish, but essentially it's a pre-stress, post-tension building. So what do I mean by that? Well, It's lots of pieces of concrete that we call ribs in many parts of the building, and beams and things like that, that are made in a factory outside. Huge cranes lift them into position and place them in position. So it's a bit like a giant Lego. Lego, by the way, is also Danish, just like the architect. No connection I'm aware of, but it's just interesting. So above you can see now all these separate pieces. There are over 2,000 of them. But one thing that's identical is that they've all got the same degree of curvature. Exactly the same degree of curvature from the spherical solution. So concrete with steel inside, giving it strength, and then placed into position, hollow sections in behind, steel cables then drop down, tightened off, and then cut off and blocked there. And that's for the tension, to hold it all in place. Massive structure, as you can see. Total weight of all of these sails sitting up in this space up here is 20,000 tons. Now, what does that represent in a kind of a way that we could sort of understand? I asked ChatGPT the other day, one of those things, I said, work it out for me. What is it? They said, well, it's around 4,500 African elephants. Not those cute little ones in India or Thailand, the big dudes in Africa. About 4,500, a lot of weight. You're trying to imagine 4,500 African elephants galloping across the Serengeti, yeah. Well, not galloping, but, galumphing or whatever they do. Rent is on for the last time today, this afternoon, last performance, and then it bumps out. That's the reverse of bumping in. Bumping in is where everything arrives before the performers, the scenery, curtains, lights, all that. Bumping out's the reverse of that, because we're about to start our second ballet season of the year. We do around 100 performances of ballet every year in 2 seasons, and 200 performances of opera in 2 seasons. So the opera comes back, the ballet comes back, and we just keep going opera, ballet, plus a musical and some contemporary music in the middle of the year as well. Just one theatre. So we're going to look at the 2 big ones. This one here, the Joan Sutherland Theatre, is named after a famous Australian opera singer called Joan Sutherland. That's a painting of her there. She was regarded by people in the opera industry as the voice of the 20th century. She was an extraordinary talent who was, it's one thing to be technically good, to know the placement of notes and all that, and the technicality of it all, but to also be someone who can tell a story through that. Not just to be technically good, and people say, gee, that sounds great, but where's the emotion? She was great at both. She really carried it well. So then this theatre becomes the Opera and Ballet Theatre. We're not going to climb right up to the top, fortunately for you guys. We are going to go into what's called the Loge. Now, rules on photography. There are a few that apply here, and we are very strict about them. So we are not allowed to take any photos or videos. And it feels like it's 18 now. This is the weirdest weather. Oh, goodness. Anyway, you're coming out through glass doors with metal frames. The frames are made of bronze. It doesn't rust. You have to imagine a place like this with all that salt air outside. We have to be very careful what we're built from. So bronze everywhere. Tiles are not affected by the weather. They were all designed by Johan Utzon and then made in a place called Höganäs, which is in western Sweden. When he was a kid and as a teenager, he used to sail with the members of his family across the Øresund Sea, the Øresund Straits, that separate that part of Denmark and Sweden. And he would often end up having a beer and a sandwich at a place called Höganäs, and was aware, therefore, from childhood, that there was a company there that made tiles and bathroom fittings, worked with clay. And this is why we end up with these tiles from there. We ordered to have made and imported 1,056,006. That number, minus 10%, were then put on the building. That 10% are then put in storage for replacement. We replace around 4 a year only. They're well-made tiles. Well, tiles are. I mean, they're baked at very high temperatures, so even 38 degrees air temperature, or even more, doesn't affect them. There are two different colors. A little hard to see with the cloud cover, but you can see hopefully that there's a glossy surface, and that glaze underneath that is a bumpy surface. And the idea of that is so that when the sun moves over, it shimmers like sun on waves on the harbor. So it's a beautiful connection then between the building and the waves on the harbour. So everything is about this sort of making it fit beautifully within its environment as well. This area has two names. One is Hurricane Alley. It can blow through here. There's another name, but I can't mention it because I sense a lot of very sensitive people in this group. So I'm not going to mention it's called the cleavage. And if you don't know, you won't know. Now, let's go in here, and this is where it starts getting a bit messy today.